Zack Bryan sold his catalog, his publishing catalog, for $350 million on a new deal with Warner Records. This move places him among the ranks of the artists like Bob Dylan, who sold his catalog for $300 million. Let's get some data here on this. Zack Bryan's $350 million deal includes the sale of his publishing catalog and a new recording contract with Warner Records. The figure surpasses Bob Dylan's $300 million sale, highlighting the increasing value of music rights. Blah, 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 blah. Authenticity. Bryan built his reputation on raw, heartfelt songwriting. How does this massive deal align with his image? It's a significant investment. Did he sell his soul? So many different things, so many takes you could do. I actually did something where I did like a little bit of a pros and cons list because I was curious, TiVo, and we'll get into this a little bit. But what I was curious about is, why would the artist do this, and why would the publishing? I understand why the record company would do it. They're assuming that over the next however many years, they're going to make more money with owning these publishing rights. And they'll give Zack Bryan $350 million. I would imagine it's not a one check type of deal, but over however many years, and they probably anticipate year X is where we break even on this investment, and from then on we're just making money, right? So what you'd expect from a deal like this. So I had an understanding there, but I was curious, why would like a Zack Bryan who's doing quite well? He's gaining popularity, right? I think it seems like a lot of people recently have turned on. I know he had the whole thing with the Barstool girl and such, so I know that kind of soured, I think, the taste of some folks, but not all. And typically stuff like that kind of blows over and people move on. But I was just curious as to why, and it really just seemed that it was, from what I could gather, I mean, the obviously the pros were the financial security. The deal gets you a ton of upfront capital. You don't have to worry so much anymore about how we do have to worry to a degree with how the record sells, but we'll get into that. But also partnering with a company like Warner is could have you grow your brand even more. They have a huge reach. They're probably spending millions and millions in marketing dollars every year for their artists, and so you're likely to grow your brand, right? From a cons perspective, you'd have to imagine at least one of them being the fact that if they're willing to pay you $350 million for your music, they likely think that you would have made more in X number of years. Like you'd if you waited a little bit longer, you'd likely make more. Now you could make the argument though that without the partnership of Warner, he may never have been able to make that kind of money. Like Warner has a unique ability type of thing to bring this to a new level, right? From a small town perspective as a restaurateur, there are certain things that my company can do because I own 5 different places in a small town. There's certain things that I can do that other companies wouldn't be able to do, right? Like my marketing budget, although again it goes to a bunch of different places, my marketing budget is probably much larger than most marketing budgets for people that own one shop, right? That's just economies of scale. That's how that works. My buying power with these is much larger. If I decide to say, hey, listen, let's say it's a smaller company, but I use Bud Light as an example because it's a huge company, right? Bud Light's a bad example because obviously if I stopped using them on my small corner in Hoboken, it's not really affecting Bud Light sales all that much. But let's say, for example, I decided to take Bud Light out. If I took them out of 6 stores, it'd be much more impactful to the local rep for Anheuser-Busch than if somebody took them out of their 1 store. Just again, it's how this works. So perhaps this catalog, this publishing catalog, is worth a couple $1 billion, but only with Warner Brothers. Possible, that's a possibility. You'd have to imagine that at the very least, Warner Brothers is thinking, and that, hey, listen, we're going to buy this for $350, but we're going to make a couple billion. And you have to. Does Zack Bryan want to do that? Does he not want to? Obviously he does want to do that. He just sold it, but it's an interesting way to kind of monetize your work. I mean, we just saw the whole thing with Taylor Swift, and I forget the guy's name that did Bieber. Do you remember the guy's name? Scooter Braun. Yeah, Scooter Braun. Where this whole thing, where she was, she wanted to buy her stuff, and she wasn't given the opportunity. And Scooter Braun came and did it, and then so now she's making Taylor's versions to all the songs, so that the other ones don't make as much money, which they inevitably will make a lot of money still. But so they don't make as much money. So, again, there's pros and cons to all of this, but it seems as though this is a fairly popular thing to do. And Zack Bryan here, just made $350 million to sell his music or publishing catalog, which will be interesting. And does it provide a ton of pressure on him now, knowing that he just got this much money? Does it provide him a ton of pressure to these next few albums, which I believe it includes? Does it make him have to? Does it make him feel pressure, almost like a huge athlete signs with the Yankees for $600 million? Does it provide enough? Yeah, you got the money, but does your performance start to waver a little bit because I have to make this money back? Like, I have to be worth this kind of a deal. Now, Warner Brothers doesn't have an avid fan base that is going to boo you and such if you're not doing as well as you should be. So it's a little bit of a different scenario. But I'd be curious, Tiva, what's your take on all the $350 million deal? Obviously, he's good for the rest of his life, although he likely was good for the rest of his life anyway.
Right.
Do you, if you're a Zack Bryan type of artist, again, impossible to put yourself in those shoes until you really are. But like, what do you think? Do you think you sell your publishing catalog on the possible climax of your career on the way up? Or are you like, no, listen, I think I'd rather have these rights over the next, say, 50 years of my life that will just continue to bring in money. Again, $350 million, you no longer need to bring in money. And you could flip that into other type of investments. Maybe you want to go do different things and not be making money off your music, and go ahead and do X, Y, and Z. And that's what you're going to use this money for. So you will be bringing in money for the rest of your life anyway. Who really knows? But what's your take, Tiva? What are you doing in this situation?
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the artistic journey. It's like, if you want to be in control of it and own everything, and especially the creative control, then you go that route. If you have good discussions and you understand the contract you're signing to take this large lump sum, when you're this young and at the peak of your career, I can't see anything wrong with it either, right? Because like you just mentioned, you could put this type of capital into the money machine. Money makes money, and you find the right business managers, and you're just the money you take now is going to make more money later, just like Warner's is going to make more money off you as well. Because like a deal like this, I believe is forever. It's in perpetuity. Unless I'm missing some details, but a big deal like this means that they own his rights now, 100 years from now, and 200 years from now. So, yeah, I think you take the money and run, if that's not run, but like you take the money if you're okay with the artistic direction that Warner's wants to put you in the next decade. Pressure to perform, I don't think so. You can, because like, as long as you're still popular, you can always play the hits. Like, people go to you concerts to this day. They want to hear Beautiful Day. They don't want to necessarily hear the new record.
Of course.
So you can always, your fans will always be your fans. I think that's kind of within your control, even if you're kind of forced to pump out an album now every year. And maybe you're not going to find the magic that you found with your first couple albums, but that's every big artist. Very rarely can you find an artist that can, have those life-changing records or even one song multiple times in their career. It's very hard, because I feel like songwriting is such a personal thing, right? Like, you're different when you're broke and have your guitar in your one bedroom studio apartment, whatever, and you're sipping on a Bud Light and you're heartbroken. Like, you're not really going to feel that way when you're worth $250 million in a mansion, whatever your life experiences are. But maybe you can write music to that feeling, but like, you do kind of become a little bit more unrelatable the more rich you get. Probably it's probably harder to tap into that feeling. But congrats to him on the success. I think you just got to be okay with whatever machine you're getting put into. I also think the AI episode here, I think the number one thing you could say for taking it, as long as you're okay with the creative direction, who the hell knows what the music industry is going to look like 10 years from now? There's a huge change from 20 years ago, and selling dollar songs on iTunes, right? And now everybody's talking about how they don't make money on the streaming, they only make money on the touring. And so what's going to change? And AI is copying people's voices literally today. So I think there's something to be said about, yeah, man, just if you got it on the table, you should take it, not knowing what the music industry is going to look like in 20 years.
That's a great point. In the AI episode, as you say, it's a really good point. Who knows really what everything looks like in however many years. And obviously companies are constantly evolving, trying to make more money and become more efficient and such. I'm curious to how the music industry would change. It is interesting to, I do remember back in the day doing the 99 cent songs and like buying these songs and only wanting to buy songs I'm definitely going to listen to and so on and so forth. And now every song ever is at my fingertips whenever I want. And, I think Taylor Swift's music now on Apple Music, but I think originally it wasn't because she wasn't getting paid enough. You had this struggle, and still ongoing. I mean, I always enjoy it, and I sit there for some of the YouTube or some of the TikTok clips when I see like, hey, listen, this guy got 12 billion streams on Spotify last year or last month. What did you get paid? And he was like, 35 grand or something like that. And you're sitting there like, oh, 35,000, that's great. But then you compare it to 11 billion streams, and you're just like, what? I feel like it should be more than that. That seems like less than a penny a stream or something. Like, it seems crazy that's how little it is. And then you have to go into the model of Spotify and Apple Music, which I don't know well enough to be like, okay, well, what do they make on this platform, and from advertising and from marketing, from how many, when you get into these larger companies, it seems as though a lot of what goes in and why you would go into I think the parent, or it's Warner Brothers Records, when you go into them, like you talk about the marketing dollars that they have, they are going to now blast you out in such a larger way than what you could do on your own, right? When you have these small time artists who are making solid music the best way they could. And again, this is why TikTok became one of the reasons TikTok became as big as it did, is artists found a way that really was able to go and get a lot of people quickly for free. Like, it wasn't like they needed to, find this, get found by a label, and the label comes in, they have some marketing dollars that they can put behind you, and so on and so forth. Like, you could be found much quicker on TikTok for free, or much cheaper. I don't know about quicker, but cheaper. And like I said, previously on this episode and in other episodes, you learn these marketing game, and it's like, all right, well, if you can get on, again, Zack Bryan's big. I'm sure he could get bigger. But once you learn that audience, and Warner Brothers probably has a pretty good bead on Zack Bryan's audience, if you have the marketing dollars, I mean, you just spent $350 million, maybe they budgeted, another $25 million in there in marketing dollars, that perhaps they know that they're going to get X amount more streams. They're going to do this, this, and this. They're going to grow his brand. He's going to have, not only has the US and Canada people loving him, but now it's going to be all of UK. It's going to be Australia. It's going to be, all around the world. And now his, 20 million, people that are, fans of his might turn into 70 million in 2 years with Warner Brothers' marketing budget, just getting his music in front of the right people that haven't heard him yet. And now from their perspective, it's like, oh, well, listen, yeah, you were making, 50 million a year from this. We were going to make our money back in 7 years, but because we're going to triple your audience in the next 2 years, we're going to make our money back in a year and a half, or 2 years in this, 3 years in this, which is a great investment. We're going to break even in year 3. By year 10, we've quadrupled the investment we made, and so on and so forth. So it's an interesting kind of model, and you see a lot of artists do it. And I think you're right. I think from an artist perspective, I think I do it too. I think, listen, that's your guys' game, right? That's Warner Brothers' game. I don't play that game. I'm not there. I don't have the infrastructure in the Pat Light camp, or the budget, or whatever, to really get myself in the know-how, to know how to build my audience in that way. Besides, keep playing, keep producing content, right? Keep doing these things that, like, Warner Brothers may have a whole strategy in place, with a whole team in place, with people with decades of experience that are really confident that, hey, listen, if we get him into our funnel, he's going to quadruple his audience in the next 2 years, and we are going to make a killing on this. And again, you would look at that, and maybe 10 years from now, TiVo, we're sitting here talking on episode 5,000 and being like, wow, listen, Warner Brothers did a great job. They killed it, absolutely killed it on this deal. And you might say, look how much money Zack Bryan could have made. But could he have? Did he have the ability to do this? What I can do and what Apple can do, not that it's the same, but very different things. I may think of a great idea, but I can't execute on it. Apple, you have to sell your idea to Apple. You sold your, oh my God, I can't believe you sold out. You sold your idea for $1 million. It made Apple 20 billion. Yeah, maybe you could have structured a better deal for yourself, but at the same time, you had no ability to execute that deal or execute that idea. So it's an interesting thing. I'm curious to see what AI does when it comes to, Zack Bryan, or not Zack Bryan, but when it comes to the music industry in and of itself. Obviously, you always still need that relatability. I think there's a joke, obviously, Taylor Swift makes terrific music, but there's always a joke that, what if she finds love? If she really finds love, which seemingly she may have done with Travis Kelce, but if she finds love, does she become less relatable? Because everybody loves those love songs and those different, you talk about her being a cheerleader or not being the cheerleader back in high school, and so many people can relate to that, and so on and so forth, and you build this audience. If she no longer if she's now in love and doesn't have that raw emotion to draw on anymore, does it become less relatable? Now, there's plenty of people that are also in love in this world, so I'm sure that she could draw on that raw emotion to make great music and such, and she's an unbelievably talented artist, so I'm sure she'd figured it out. But there is that joke, and so now, with Zack Bryan, I don't know much about his music, but if he is, drawing on that raw emotion of not being super wealthy or what have you, and this thing that everybody can relate to, and now all of a sudden that goes away, maybe the motivation goes away to make great music, and all of this kind of fizzles out. It's always a possibility, but you'd have to imagine with this type of investment from Warner Brothers that they have a pretty good feeling that that's not going to happen. So with that being said, although that was our more in-depth topic of the day, listen, AI is changing the world. I think that's what we know, TiVo. AI is changing the world. This is the direction we're going in. Again, I implore you at home to please get on the train. I'm sure. I feel like I'm a Bitcoin podcast from back in 2008. Oh, I'm telling you, this is going to be a thing, guys. This is going to be a thing. It's already a thing. Just start getting used to it. Start working with it. Start talking to it, doing a bunch of stuff, and most of it's free. You can definitely buy. I do the paid version for ChatGPT, which is I think $20 a month, but most of it's free. Just get on it, see what's out there, see what it can help you with, see what it can't help you with. I think it's definitely something that you should be trying to get accustomed to, because I think that it's going to be around for a while. I think it could change a ton of different industries. I saw a TikTok yesterday of this doctor who thinks that AI will eventually be the thing that cures cancer, because of just how many models it's able to run in such a quick period of time with this work, and you just going back and forth. It's going to learn so much faster than we would be able to learn and experiment. So anyway, with that being said, TiVo, I hope nothing more than that you have a terrific weekend. I hope that everybody at home had a great weekend because you listened to this on Monday. Again, as always, follow us on YouTube and Instagram, specifically YouTube though. That's where I'm more. I feel like I'm in YouTube is my podcast world. Instagram is, I haven't really done a bunch of TikToks in a while, but Instagram and TikTok's more personal. Instagram is more have been really restaurant heavy, which people seem to really have taken their one side or the other, whether they don't like me or like me. It seems like I'm a polarizing figure right now with my pricing. But regardless of all that, I hope everybody had a great weekend. It was Mother's Day this past Sunday, so please wish everybody's mothers happy belated Mother's Day. TiVo, please send my best to your mother. And until next time, guys, we'll see you.